Shalom, everybody. This is so wonderful to be back. And I would like to begin with bracha for Torah study. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. Amen. Amen. All right, there are a few things I want to do to begin. Today's topic is about anger. Okay, so it is anchored in our Torah portion this week, which is Tisa, and the topic that I wanted to offer us today is Gleanings on anger from the Parashat and beyond. All right, so we'll be exploring not just how anger manifests itself, or this experience of anger, in our Torah portion, but also we'll be looking at other texts related to the idea of this emotion called anger. And really the idea is for us to be able to explore, right, this sort of like prominent emotion that exists in our society, and to figure out, like, what do our sources say about this? What is our Torah, how does our Torah portion deal with anger? And, what are we meant to do with it? And when it happens, what advice are we given by our sources, by our tradition, on how to manage anger, how to deal with anger, how to dispel it, how to relate to somebody else when it's manifesting in them? All right, so that's pretty much the topic, but we will start, we'll go deep into the text, and then we'll go out into some other sources. But I want to start somewhere else entirely, which is in the world of Marvel. Okay, so before we begin, what is you could write it in your chat, your favorite Marvel character. Okay, that these are, right, DC, you could also go to DC Comics, comic book characters. Who is your favorite one? Oh, good. We got Wonder Woman, the She-Hulk. Okay, good. You know where I'm going with this, right? Batman. Okay, good. You could still put them in. Okay. Oh, Scarlet. Okay, let's see. Aquaman. Good. Love it. All right, you could still write those in. I'm going to start with a clip because I think it really speaks to what's going on here as an introduction to our text. That did not work. Let's try that again. No. Hold on. Oh. Okay. Every time I try to share, it's like, okay, please God, please work. Here we go. All right, I think this will work. Let's try. Please restart your audio sharing application. Oh no. Okay.
Do you want to send me the link and I'll try to share it?
Oh,
sweet. There you go. There, it's going.
Really? Okay. Yeah, you see that?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, let's see if this works. So this is from one of the last Avengers movies. It's 2016. Ready?
Now might be a really good time for you to get angry.
That's my secret, Cap. I'm always angry.
Okay. All right. So did you hear what Bruce Banner says when the captain says to him, "This would be a good time for you to get angry"? And what does he say? "That's my secret, Captain. I'm always angry." So that's, I think, a good starting place for us, because a lot of people feel that way. Anger is an emotion that it's like some people have to just try to keep it at a simmer. Okay. Some people are lucky. It doesn't, they don't get angry. They learned well, maybe when they were young, like what to do with those feelings. But it is one of these like sort of visceral things that is almost uncontrollable when it comes up. But I want to ask you another introductory question that will come up in our text as we go along. Typically, what would you say is the emotion behind anger? Right? Anger is sort of like a cover-up, all right, of something else. So what is behind, would you say, or thinking about maybe the last time you were angry, what was the emotion you could maybe pinpoint that drove the anger forward? Frustration, okay, good. A lot of frustration, hurt, fear, yes, I understand, right? The one who, Miss Mia Reed, yeah, where a lot of us are feeling near rage lately, okay? If you're not angry, you're not paying attention, okay, good. All right, very, very good. So, right, rejection, okay, all of these things, these are all valid, all true, all right, disagreement, okay, which also could be joined together with the sense of frustration, all right, these are, control, lack of control, okay, yafeh. So, let's remember, okay, that there are these other emotions that are behind the experience of anger, because that will help us as we navigate the texts. Okay, so Julie, if I have to share my screen. So here is our bracha for screen sharing. Oh my gosh. Please Hashem, let it work. Let's see. How's that? Do you see my screen? Do you see the text?
We
No
do
text?
right now. Oh yeah, there we go. Great.
Okay, Tisa?
Yep.
All right, fantastic. So again, for Dr. Bruce Banner, don't make me angry. You wouldn't like it when I'm angry. And Bruce Banner, as many of you probably know, is the Hulk. Okay, so the sin of the golden calf is where we're going to shift our attention. I'm going to read just for expediency, but I'd really love for you to be able to use the chat to weigh in if you're having, if you have a comment or question. Maybe Julie, you can help me with that, because I can't really see everyone, and I also can't see the chat at this moment. So here we are, Chet ha'egel, the sin of the golden calf. So God says to Moses, lech raid, okay? That's like, hurry up. It's not just go down. There's like this like a chaotic moment, like you lead the seconds, okay, as lech raid. Why? Because the people whom you brought out of Egypt, look at that. The people whom you brought out of Egypt, God is saying to Moses, you brought them out. He's already distancing himself, as it were, from the people, from this nation. What have they done? They're acting basely. They have been quick to turn aside from my way that I enjoined upon them. They have made themselves a molten calf. That's the chet ha'egel, bowed low to it, sacrificed to it, saying, this is your God. O Israel, who brought you out of the land of Egypt. So God further says to Moses, I see that this is a stiff-necked people, kshe oref, okay? Now he says, let me be. He says, ve'ata hanichali, leave me alone. Vayichar api bahem v'achlem ve'aseh otcha legoy gadol. Let my anger be blaze forth against them, that I may destroy them. God says to Moses, let my anger, right? Let me be, leave me alone. Let my anger blaze forth against them. What is God really saying here? By saying this to Moses, not just doing it, God could do whatever he wants, or God wants, right? As it were, God is bringing Moses into this. You can unmute even, it might be easier for me. What is God doing here relationally with Moses?
If folks want to use the raise hand function, we can. Rosa, I see your. Can we find you? Go ahead, Rosa.
He's making Moses a partner. He's making Moshe a partner in this whole thing. And
Yes.
he's giving him a chance to either say, yeah, you're right, they're not worth saving, or to pray for them, which he does.
Right. Thank you, Rosa. That's exactly it, right? God could do whatever he wants. Instead, God says here, let me check in with Moses. God's already distanced himself. I'm sorry I'm using the pronoun he for God. I don't really believe that God is a he. It's just sort of the way I was, it's just coming out that way. So God is saying, right, Moses, work with me here. It's underlying, okay? This is subliminal. This is not exactly, but Darshani, the text is saying, why would God even have this conversation with Moses? Because it seems that God wants Moses to sort of be to help in this process. Talk me down. Tell me what I need to do here. Okay, and that is an opener because now Moses can and does respond to God. Moses implored God, right, as Rosa just said, to pray. Let not your anger blaze forth against this people. And the word used here, Yechareh apecha. I want you to see that word for a second. It's also, up here, by Yichar af. This image of anger, okay, the biblical locution for the word anger is like the tea kettle, right? That's overflowing with pressure from the steam. Like in the cartoons, the steam is coming out of the character's nose and ears when they're angry. That's why yichar af. That there's so much pressure there that the steam is coming out. And what we're going to see as the opposite of that a little later is erech hapayim, is the elongated breath. So just as a meditational or mindfulness concept, which I'm going to be teaching later for myjewishlearning.com, in fact, later today at 4:00, some tools for mindfulness. One of them is noticing what happens with the breath when we are agitated and when especially angry, when we've reached the quote unquote boiling point. Steam comes out of our noses, out of our ears. It's not a pretty sight. It's like sort of uncontrolled. All right, the molecules going crazy. And that's this idea of vayichar af. So here Moses has the opportunity to plead with God, to engage with God, to be relational with God and have an impact. And then here Moses says, look, what are you doing? He uses a few different kinds of ploys here. You delivered this people from the lands of Egypt with a strong hand and an outstretched arm. Let not the Egyptians say it was with evil intent that he delivered them, only to kill them off in the mountains and annihilate them from the face of the earth. Another way of saying this is, what would the neighbors think? What are the goyim going to think if you annihilate this people? They'll think you're a terrible God, that you took them out only to kill them. Right? It's another way of, it's an opening to plead with God, to talk God back into a state of calm, all right? To think rationally, as it were, okay? God could do whatever God wants, once again, right? Moses doesn't control God. This is an opening for God to be in relationship with Moses, to have this conversation. And in fact, it might be a way for Moses to be learning, modeling how to be a good leader, to pay attention. Moses may have just run down the mountain and been afraid, but Moses wasn't afraid of God's anger. Moses had the wherewithal to stick with this situation, right? And to be a friend. Who's a good friend? Someone who could be there, right? To help when somebody needs you. So he says, turning from your blazing anger, right? He says, turn from your blazing anger, renounce the plan to punish your people. Straight out. There's no beating around the bush about this, right? Very straightforward. And it works, okay? It works. And the Lord renounces the punishments. Some commentators say that it was just sort of like a temporary fix, and that this punishment for Chet HaEgel actually was like a gasket that a little bit goes all the time, even to this day. Right, that a little bit of the punishment is always being meted out because of this grave sin. All right, never mind that. That's another whole lesson. But the idea here is that when you're a friend, maybe you can learn how to love this person, or in case of Moses and God, to sit with them, to be with them, and know what to say to help them. And we're going to learn about that flip side of what to say. What are the helpful lines or the tools that are available in a relationship, that when to pull them out, when to use them to help another person in need. And when someone's in anger, believe me, they're in need. It's a way of calling out for help. Okay, so he is successful. Now the question is anger contagious? So Moses was just successful in helping God, right, to navigate God's experience of anger. Now what happens when Moses becomes angry? So Vayif and Vayered Moshe min hahar. Now Moses turns like on his heels, right? He quickly goes down the mountain, and he's holding the 2 tablets. This is very important. I'm working in the English here, but here the Hebrew is for everyone to use. That's available to you as well. So Moses quickly goes down the mountain. He's holding the tablets of the covenant, the Shnei Luchot HaBrit. The Torah is sure to tell us that they were inscribed on the one side and the other. And the word used here is charut, which is the Midrash says charut here in verse 16. Charut is engraved, inscribed, but it can also be read as what? Cherut, which means what? Freedom. So the words on there are a reminder, okay, of freedom. There's freedom of choice, that the words are inscribed, but there's an aspect of freedom. And the traditional commentary is that the words will make us free. The Torah sets us free, right? But there's something really beautiful about using that word particularly here in this context of choosing how do we respond to challenging situations. All right, so we'll keep that in mind. So he's going down the mountain, and Joshua, recall, he was the only one who was allowed toward the camp, toward the mountain, away from the camp. Joshua is Moses' helper. He's second in command. And this is an interesting leadership point here, that Joshua is listening to the sounds, and he thinks, what does he say? There's a cry of war in the camp. That's what he thinks it is. But Moses stops. Moses never ceases to be a leader. He turns to Joshua and he says, no. You need to understand, Joshua, I know you're a warrior, but not every sound is a cry of war. He says, this is not the sound of triumph or the sound of defeat. It's distress. It's distress. And it's almost like this sound of distress is what's permeating the entire narrative. God is in distress. Now Moses is in distress. The people are in distress. Joshua's in distress. But everybody channels it differently. It comes out in different ways. Is that not, in many ways, the society we're living in today? That many of us feel distress for the pandemic, social reasons, all kinds of reasons, political reasons. It comes out in different ways. Some people know how to manage it. Some people know how to sit and breathe and talk to their friends and talk about their feelings. And some people just need to lean on their car horn and let everybody know how angry they are, okay? Even though the traffic is not the situation, the trigger is really something much larger. So Moses comes to the camp, and what does it say about him? He is enraged. Where's the words? He hurled, so verse 19, sorry. He sees the chet, the sin, vayichar af Moshe, and he's angry. That kind of anger that has the steam coming out of his nose, angry. And what does he do? He has nobody to turn to. There's nobody to turn to. There's no friends to help him in that moment. He takes the tablets, and what does he do with them? He hurls them to the ground. Is that not anger, mamish? To throw something. Have you ever been so angry? You throw something. I did that once. My laptop. Boy, oh boy, did I regretted that immediately, right? Not at anyone. No one was hurt except my laptop and me, because I had to pay for it. But he hurled the tablets. Now, the commentators will do a lot with this one motion of hurling the tablets, okay? One of the most beautiful texts is that the letters made the tablets, the letters that were engraved made the tablets light. And as soon as Moshe saw the sin, the tablets, the letters flew away. It was like the contract was broken, and the Hebrew letters had no place there anymore. They needed to be reconfigured, okay, through a process of tshuva. So not only that, he takes the calf, he burns it, he turns it to power, he makes people drink it. I mean, he's really going for this, okay? So the question then is why does he smash the tablets? What is going on here? And I know we're going to run out of time, and I'm a little bit sad about that. I'm not angry, just sort of. All right, so I'm going to take us through just for the sake of time, and then I'll stop for some questions. So there are many reasons we can imagine why he's angry, right? Here's the Jewish people, the Israelites. He told them, I'm going to be down 40 days. They miscalculated the time. They thought he was late. He really wasn't. He can't understand, like, the main thing they're not supposed to do is make a engraven image and bow to it. All right, it would have been bad enough they just made the thing, but then they're having a huge party. It was riotous. It was highly inappropriate. So here's this beautiful teaching, which actually is just like the grandfather of the Lubavitcher Rebbe. And why does he throw them? So he's completely reworking this. As soon as Moses came near the camp and he saw the calf and the dancing, he became enraged, hurled the tablets. This is the verse, and he shattered them. How could it be that Moses smashed the tablets in anger? Did it not say that anyone who smashes his possessions in anger is like one who worships idols? Isn't that incredible? Here the people are worshiping an idol, and here Moses is like worshiping an idol. And this is one of the statements from the Bavli, from the Talmud. The anger is like idol worship. All right, we have to unpack that, okay? But it's like idol worship. Right? You forget your way. You forget what's in front of you. You become so enraged that it's like it blocks your thinking. If anyone's ever been in that state of mind, you know what that feels like. So he says, think of it this way. It's Hasidic teaching. When a tzaddik desires to raise up the soul of another person, she has to lower herself even down to the level of that sinner to raise up those holy sparks, wallowing in impurity in turn. And there's no concern that in doing so, the tzaddik will actually lose her true state. Why? Because Proverbs, it says 7 times the tzaddik will fall and gets up. So now it's like a cat with 9 lives, so to speak. Now in the incident of the golden calf, the whole of the people of Israel sinned and fell to the lowest possible state, to idolatry. Moses would not have been able to raise them up from that place had he not himself descended to that low state. A descent for the sake of ascent. Isn't that nice? A descent for the sake of ascent. And that is why he smashed the tablets, an act that was similar to idolatry. Okay, so let's take a moment. I'll unshare with the blessing that I can reshare in a minute. So comments or questions before we move on. We saw God enraged, then we saw Moses enraged, and we saw 2 very different ways of dealing with that kind of anger. Any comments or questions? Okay, just go ahead and unmute.
Okay, go ahead, Tanya.
We can't hear you. You need to unmute.
Tanya?
Okay, I think anger, if channeled constructively, can lead to positive changes. And Moses did a lot of corrective things. And I do want to ask you a question, Rabbi. When he ground the calf to powder and he mixed it with water, I read rabbinic commentaries say that was the same procedure, the way they handled the sota, the unfaithful woman. And because Israel was seen as God's wife, this was unfaithfulness, and that's why he made them drink it with the powder. Because I was reading about the sota this morning.
Wow. Yeah, no, there is a similarity there. And again, yeah, about, in terms of breaking a relationship. Yes, absolutely. All right, one more comment, and then we'll go back to the text.
Jay?
Well, what bothers me is in the first case, when God was angered and Moses talked him out of it, God had that partner, Hevruta, togetherness, to be able to, a partner to help him figure out what to do. Moses is all by himself in this point. And I don't see anybody being a partner to him to help him decide whether or not what he's doing is right in his anger.
All right, thank you. Yes, Jay. All right, that's a really interesting point. Right here, Moses is alone. You maybe Yahushua, maybe Joshua could have helped him, but they weren't on the same level yet. Moses is still in a mentoring position, clearly, right, to Joshua. And where's Aaron, right? So we're going to see where's Aaron in a minute. Aaron was a little busy, and there's a lot to say about Aaron, right? Because he's very involved in the building of the calf. But the question of why he was doing it, there are many sources that help to save face for Aaron. Okay, so we're not going to completely go down that road. But at that moment, right? Even the letters on the tablet weren't there for Moses. Even they flew off. You know, maybe like with us, like I have this feeling when have like any kind of like feelings of, you know, of extreme. Yeah, I like to look into the Torah. What does the Torah say about this? Even the activity of studying Torah can be joyous, can be uplifting. Moses couldn't even study Torah at that moment. The letters flew away. So he was really on his own, confronting quite the drama before him. All right, let's go see what happens. Where's Aaron? Oh my. I think this would be easy.
Rabbi Upbin, if it doesn't work, I can also do the share.
How's that? Do you see it?
We see it.
Okay. So here we go. So now Aaron is the first person to interact with Moses in this state of rage. Vayomer Haron. Aaron says to him, Al yichar af Adoni. Don't be angry. Raise your hand if you've ever been angry and someone says to you, don't be angry, and that actually worked. Anybody? Not usually. It's not really very helpful. But Aaron's trying. I mean, he's his brother, right? God love him, okay? So Aaron says, don't be enraged. And now he's trying. Know that this people is bent on evil. He's trying to cover for the people, right? They said, make us a God to lead us for that man Moses who brought us out of Egypt. We don't know what's happened to him. So I said to him, whoever has gold, take it off. He's telling a story, right? Maybe he's not being, it's just interesting because we have to ask ourselves, did it work? Did it not work? I mean, after this, we see a plague, okay? And, you know, a number of people are wiped out. So Aaron does a lot of good things. He's Rodef Shalom. This is what we know about Aaron. He is a pursuer of peace. And he may not just know exactly how to do that at this moment. His pursuing peace in this moment was for the people. He had to be there, sort of help to quell their anger, the people. So he turned fully to them as their helper. And then when Moses comes into the picture, he's trying his best, right, to turn toward Moshe to help him. Does it work or not? Sometimes we just have to know the right thing to say. Was it right that Aaron at least tried? I believe so. Did we can analyze was what he said helpful? Okay, we can discuss it. But at least he tries. Okay, he interfaces, and we know from the experience of Moshe and God that interfacing is important. Not to run away, not to hide, but to turn to, right, panim el panim, toward the person who's angry and try. Okay. So he tries. Now Moses, fast forward to the book of Bamidbar. Moses, you know, I only bring this up as, you know, sort of a side point, but later in his career, at the very end of his career, we see that Moshe is angry again. And this time, there's no moving on. This time, this is the situation, and the people they're rising up against Moses. Where's water coming from? We need water. You know, he's upset with them. And he turns to God, and God says, like you did before, speak to the rock, right? Take your stick. And what does Moshe do? He takes the stick in front of everybody, and he hits the rock, and he says, Shimona Hamorim, listen up, you rebels. Shall we get water for you out of this rock? And he hits the rock twice. We could read into this. I mean, we're not spending a lot of time on this today. This is another class that we could spend analyzing this text. But the commentators infer from this that Moses maybe overreacted. Moses maybe should not have hit the rock twice. Maybe he shouldn't have spoken to the people so harshly. to call them rebels. And for this, Moses is punished that he won't go into the land of Israel. He will only see, from the steppes of Moab, he will not go into the lands himself. So it just shows, right, there are limits of anger and consequences, real consequences, as we all know, relationally, but also oftentimes for ourselves. What happens to ourselves, as a repercussion from the anger is very serious. Okay, in this case, Moses is not able to go into the promised lands. Okay, we can spend more time on that. That's not the definitive, conversation about that piece of text. So I'd like to look into some strategies now. About here, what's our time? Okay, we still have about 10 minutes. So God says, all right, so this is a little bit further in the text. All right, this is fascinating. So Moses is now reunited with God. They're having a chat, Moses says, I want to see your face. I want to know more about you. Moses is going to write the second set of tablets. And this is fascinating. God says to Moses, say to the Israelite people, again, you are Amkshe Oref, you're stiff-necked people. If I were to go in your midst for one moment, I would destroy you. Right, this is God now just talking to Moses. God's not saying this to the people. So why? So now there's a whole thing. Now leave off your finery, these crowns that they basically got in at the Mount Sinai, and I'll consider what to do. He says, so the Israelites remain stripped of their finery. Now, what does Rashi say? I love this. If I were to go in the midst for one moment, I would destroy you. I mean, this is an awful thing to say, but all right, God recognizes God's own anger. All right, and this is very, very complicated stuff. Okay, this one point about God's anger and how it manifests throughout history, very complicated. But the only thing I want to point out right here is this, that God says to Moses, I would be angry with you for but one moment. Basically, God said, I'll be angry, but it would only be for one moment, right? God hides his face, but only for one moment, and then reveals God's face again. As it is said, hide thy face for a short moment until the indignation is past. Therefore, God says, I would consume you. Therefore, God says, it is better for you that I should send an angel. It is better for you that I should send an angel. As we know, God's angels went with us in the journeying in the wilderness. It wasn't always like God's self, right? God's presence made manifest on the Mishkan. But who led us? The fire and the cloud, God's angels. And it's kind of a notion here of self, I don't say self-mastery, but self-awareness. That God knows, I love these people. I want them to succeed. But I know myself, I tend to overdo it. I get angry. It's better for them. Let an angel spend a little more time with them. And I just think that's interesting. It's a question for ourselves of what do we need to do to check ourselves? What do we do when we have the awareness of like, I tend to act a certain way in certain situations. I'm working on it. In the meantime, let me figure something out, right? So that everyone can do well in what they need to do. Okay? Like a leader who can't do everything hires a manager, right? They're caseworkers. There are CEOs and there are CFOs, right? People have their place because they know they can't do everything. Could God do everything? Of course. But God is protecting the people, right, in this move. It's really, I could say more about it, but I just wanted to point it out because Rashi points that out. So now maybe this is the most important part of our Parsha, that God provides the antidote. Who is God really? Right? We just learned God gets angry, even if it's just for a moment. But really, what is the aspect of God that God wants us to remember and to call upon and to use? And so when Moses says, I want to see you, God says, I'm going to put you in the cleft of the rock. Okay? And I'm going to pass my goodness, and you'll see my acharai. You're going to see the afterwards of me. And these are the attributes. I want you to remember them. Okay? God is saying to Moses that this is like the characteristics, as it were, of God. Adonai, El Rachum v'Chanun, that God is compassionate and merciful. And this one right here, Erech Apayim, Remember, if Vayicharaf is the shortness of breath, is that like kettle pot over boiling, Erech Apayim is the experience of an elongated breath. Literally, Apayim is the nose, and Erech is like long. Everyone take a nice deep breath in, and inhale and exhale for me. Deep inhale and exhale. Right? That is the experience of allowing ourselves to enter into a state of calm. God is saying this mindfulness tip is right in the essence of God. We're created in God's image, and this is a gift that's given to us. An awareness of when we're feeling that things are a bit out of control, right? We take a deep breath, and we're connecting with this aspect of Erech Apayim, of compassion that God has. And we know the other attributes. We don't need to spend a lot of time on this now, but slow to anger, abounding in kindness, and faithful. So slow to anger, right, that's the ideal of Erech Apayim. All right, I'm going to move on. And so to go on this idea that God sends the angel, right, that Rashi brings out, because God is aware of God's own feelings. All right, so, kind of linking this back to Bruce Banner, what's my secret is that I'm always angry, right? God says, how do we know that God prays? There are many different examples that are given. So this is from Brachot, from the Talmud. Rav Zutra Bartuvia says, God says, may it be my will that my mercy will overcome my anger toward Israel for their transgressions. And may my mercy prevail over my other attributes through which Israel is punished. And that I may conduct myself toward my children Israel with the attribute of mercy. And that I may enter before them beyond the letter of the law. It's kind of incredible. That's one of God's prayers. Let not my anger overcome my mercy. Let this be our prayer. Let this be our prayer every day. Right? God is praying this. Right? We could pray it too. And it's funny, who's God praying to? God's praying to God's self. Okay. So we have a couple of minutes. So let me just take you through a few of the sources because they're here, but you have the source sheet. So, you can also look at them on your own. So these are from Ecclesiastes. Don't let your spirit be quick to anger, for anger abides in the breasts of fools, right? And if you've ever seen people really getting angry, sometimes it looks kind of foolish, looks kind of nuts. Reish Lakish, any man who becomes enraged, or woman, if she is wise, she loses her wisdom. If she is a prophet, she loses prophecy, right? When we're that angry, we forget. We forget. It makes us, think differently, okay? So that's something from the Talmud. And this is a good one. And we already saw this one, but a person who tears his clothes in anger or breaks his possessions or scatters his money in rage is considered as though he worships idols. Right. And again, we saw this sort of like an interesting link between the idol worshipers that the Israelites, that was what they were doing, the juxtaposition of that idea and the anger that created. Okay. A person is recognized. This is also from the Talmud, from Eruvin 65a. A person can be recognized through three things: his cup, his purse, and his anger. And there's an alliteration here: koso, kiso, and kaso. Okay, I'm going to take one more because I think this is important, because everyone's saying, well, we all have anger. So, okay, new, we're all not going to be so calm every single minute of our lives. So what happens when we get angry? That's the question. And Rambam answers this really quite beautifully. And this is from Hilchot Deot 2:3. So again, for the sake of time, I'm just reading, although it's nice to hear other voices. So, and then after this, I'm going to take questions and we'll conclude. So Rambam says, anger is also an exceptionally bad quality. It is fitting and proper that one move away from it and adopt the opposite extreme. He should school himself not to become angry, even when it's fitting to be angry. And if he should wish to arouse fear in his children and household, or within the community, if he's a community leader, and wishes to be angry at them, to motivate them, because anger could work as a motivator, right? We all know that. But if he wants to do that, then what? and he wants to motivate them to return to their path, he should present an angry front to them and punish them. Okay, we can talk about what that means, but he should be calm inwardly. He should be like a person who acts out the part of an angry person, but not himself is angry. The early sages said, anyone who we already know this, anyone who becomes angry is like an idol worshiper. Therefore, we have directed that one distance himself from anger and accustom himself not to feel any reaction, even to things which provoke this anger. And this is the good path. Okay, so putting a front on, to look angry. I'm sure there's more here that we should look at, but I'll just stop with that for a moment. I'm sure there are a lot of comments too. So, how do you feel about that? About this idea that maybe to look angry on the outside, right, as a motivator, but to work on that inside so that we don't get all rattled up inside. What do you think is the benefit of that? Let's take one or two comments. What is the benefit of the outward front of anger, but trying to keep the inward side fairly calm?
And folks can unmute themselves. Nina?
Yeah, I'm not sure what that looks like practically. I'm not sure how I can project anger outwardly and feel calm inwardly, and what that's communicating to the person or people on the receiving end of my outward fake display of anger. I'm struggling with how that makes sense. And I'll just add one more thing, which is that I think there are things that you need to be righteously, hysterically angry about at times in life. I think it's a mistake to suppress that at times. So those two things are kind of what's coming to mind, although I appreciate the teaching overall.
Yeah, no, it's definitely something that we need to sit with. This is a project and a choice, right? How do we choose to act in this world? How do we choose to respond, right, outwardly? And I think maybe what Rambam is getting at, because he's a health practitioner as well, is that there's something very unhealthy about the feeling of inner anger. Yet there could be something motivating and very helpful about saying angry words that are chosen appropriately in the right place and the right time. Right? So there's a choice that happens there, as opposed to being like ruled by the anger, that we choose to work with it. Kind of a magic trick there, but it's a practice. And I think that's what Rambam's getting at. And you're right. Look at the prophets. Were they not angry all the time? As a motivating factor. But we don't know what they felt like in their inner life. They just knew what they had to say, right, to get people to listen. Mm-hmm. So something to think about. All right, one more comment before we close here. Yeah.
Maya?
I think it diffuses the situation by keeping your anger in check, and it enables you to discuss the situation instead of everybody being angry with each other.
Right. Good. Thank you. Controlled, chosen response. Okay.
It seems like sort of that people respond better when you are expressing really, really upsetting topics very calmly. But for myself, some things, like it was said in the chat, and especially injustice towards people, that's not anything that they brought upon themselves. It's just enraging to the point where it's exhausting to feel that anger all the time. And even though, like, it talks about, like I did, I think it was with my Jewish learning when we studied Tibet, and it did talk about like how it's hard for you to engage in prayer when you're that angry and upset all the time. But it's just, I'm not even sure like where we're supposed to take this lesson from here, because it's just, it seems almost like platitudes, and it's not super helpful.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Because I wanted to get into, and we're totally out of time, so if you have the source sheet, to take a look at the last ones. And I think my favorite one is, long ago, I conquered my anger and placed it in my pocket. When I have a need of it, I take it out. And that's Rabbi Pinchas of Koretz. So maybe that also sounds like a platitude. I like it because I think it speaks to this idea that anger is there. But if we let it control us, we're really in trouble. Does that mean we can't learn to control it? If we can, we may be in a better position, or at least to surround ourselves with people who can recognize when that's coming up in us, like Moses and God, to work through it and to come to, sort of a better place with our anger, something more constructive than just